From the KALW News. Attorney Charles Cooper argued in his closing statements in defense that the courts have clearly defined marriage in a way that provides children with a stable home. Marriage channels heterosexual acts in a way that benefits the social structure, Cooper said. He made this point repeatedly. Marriage is a license to cohabitate, and most importantly, to have children. Marriage is to channel the sexual behavior between men and women into a procreative union, Cooper argued. The state's main concern in regulating marriage and seeking to channel procreation is to minimize what I would call irresponsible procreation. Let that sink in for a moment. The state doesn't need to worry about irresponsible sexual procreation with same-sex couples, Cooper said. Same-sex couples must be responsible to procreate. Alright, Cooper. This is going to be one of, I believe, 2 times that I'm ever going to agree with you in this case. Yes, you do not have to worry about same-sex couples being irresponsible in irresponsible of procreation, because in order for same-sex couples to actually have children, they do need to be responsible. In fact, it's almost as if their parenthood for them would be planned, expected. Let's see. How many of you watching out there are actually having children and are not married? How many of you out there are living together with or without children and you're not married? Exactly my point in this complete lies that Cooper is trying to make here is that marriage is a license to cohabitate and have children. Yeah. Cooper, this just like skims the iceberg of how retarded this case is with this argument. Because you do not need a license to cohabitate. And you damn sure do not need a license to fuck. Mankind have been fucking each other for millennia upon millennia. And you did not have cavemen, back in the primordial era when mankind was just starting out. You didn't have, a man come over and beat a woman in the head, drag her by the hair into his cave, and say like, oh no, before we fuck, must chisel and stone tablet that we married, chink, chink, chink. No, that didn't happen, okay? You do not need a fucking license for 2 people of any sexual orientation to fuck each other. It doesn't make any sense. And there's millions of out there that are proving you wrong, Cooper. Because if this was true, there would probably be a law for it, wouldn't there? I mean, you can't drive a car without a license unless you have a permit. You can't operate a motorcycle without a license. There's plenty of things that we can't do without licenses. But cohabitating and fucking is not one of them. Going on. There's no evidence that they, heterosexual couples, will not get married because those people, the gays, are getting married, Olson said. I don't believe that there will be a diminished procreative instinct, God forbid. Now, Olson is touching on one of the main points of this whole trial, and I want to see if you can get a reoccurring theme with this here. Cooper countered that same-sex marriage advocates openly admit that allowing people of the same sex to marry will fundamentally change the institution. Oh, no, duh. Cutting the link between sex and diapers is how one activist he quoted described the change. I'm going to repeat this because the way this is worded absolutely blows my mind, and I cannot understand how anyone can make this have logical sense. Cutting the link between sex and diapers is how one activist he quoted described the change. Someone please explain to me how allowing same-sex marriage somehow ties into, quote, cutting the link between sex and diapers. Much like the entire argument of Proposition 8 in this trial, that makes no sense. This kind of shift could have had profound social consequences, Cooper said. Ultimately, he added, if these consequences damage children, that will be the state's problem to contend with increased health, mental health, and educational and foster care costs. Okay, here Cooper is making speculations that allowing same-sex marriage is somehow going to damage children's mental well-being to the point where we're going to have increased mental health, health care, educational and foster care costs. He has no proof to substantiate these claims. He's just making accusations here with no proof. That's not the first time he's making accusations in this trial, by the way. Yeah, here's a good piece of information that Cooper was trying to argue. Cooper readily acknowledged that gays and lesbians have been subject to discrimination, but argued that gays and lesbians were not a protected class worthy of strict scrutiny in court because sexual identity could be seen as changing and fluid. A feature of birth that cannot be changed, like race or gender, defines a protected class, Cooper said. Let's see here. A feature of birth that cannot be changed, like race or gender, defines a protected class. Let's see here. A feature of birth that cannot be changed, like race or gender. It's almost as if these two have genetic qualities. For those of you who are not getting this subtle nuance, is that homosexuality has already been proven to at least be partially genetic. Some studies will say that it's genetics as well as environment, an odd combination of both. But the fact remains that there still has to be some sort of genetic precursor in order to consider yourself being gay. Because really, especially when you're in an oppressive environment, like say certain areas of the South, and there are plenty of gays and lesbians in the South that are dealing with it. But really, if you're in that kind of an oppressive society, you would not choose to be gay. There really has to be something genetic about it. You don't just wake up, you don't have guys just waking up one day, it's like, you know what, I feel like sucking dick this morning. No, that doesn't happen. No one chooses to be gay. It's genetic. And therefore, Cooper, as you stated yourself, a feature of birth that cannot be changed defines a protected class. If homosexuality has genetic qualities, then it has all rights to be labeled a protected class, if that's how we need to do things to get equal rights. And if you honestly believe otherwise, if anyone else out there believes otherwise, you're fucking retarded. The proof is already out there, people. Google it. Alright, going back. We don't have to prove that same-sex marriage would hurt marriage, Cooper said. We only have to prove that including same-sex couples would not improve marriage. This is a key point in the whole trial. Because, Cooper, once again, you're wrong. This is your time. You have millennia of information worth to try to convince the state of California, to try to convince the nation that allowing same-sex marriage is somehow going to hurt traditional marriage in a way that either increases the divorce rate with heterosexual marriage or stops heterosexuals from getting married. In either case, neither of those is going to happen. For a lot of reasons, which should be obvious to those listening to this. So, in order for you to say that you don't have to prove that same-sex marriage would hurt marriage, it's like, no, you're wrong. You do have to prove that. And you don't in this entire case. It's because you can't. There's absolutely no proof whatsoever on any logical basis that same-sex marriage is going to somehow damage heterosexual marriage. Again, Cooper, you, in your defense in this case, as well as everyone who backs Proposition 8, you're all fucking retarded. Going on, Cooper said that, again, he was not required to produce evidence. Wrong. And he said that the burden of proof is on the prosecution. But Cooper added that proof of his main point, that marriage, as we know, is defined by relationships between opposite-sex couples, is ubiquitous. And for those of you who don't know what that word means, I don't blame you, I had to look it up myself. Ubiquitous means existing everywhere at the same time. He said, you need only to go back to your chambers, Your Honor, and pull down any dictionary, pull down any book that discusses marriage, and you will find this procreative purpose at its heart wherever you go, unless, Your Honor, that the book was written by one of their experts, or has been written over the course of the last 30 years. So basically, Cooper is now trying to proclaim that because we have it written down, and because we may have it on shelves in the judge's library, and just by that fact alone, he's trying to prove that heterosexual marriage should be the only type of marriage because that's all the information we have, aside from the last 30 years. Apparently, no one bothered to take into account that Christianity, as a whole, mind you, has run rampant over the last 2 millennia all over the world, taking over and controlling other countries who had their own way of life, who had their own morals, their own values. And after these, smaller, possibly less civilized tribes were conquered, the Christian groups of various nations said, we'll allow you to live if you believe in our God. Adopt our way of life. That is assuming that they weren't thrown into slavery. Yeah, so they're trying to go on literature that is predominantly based around Catholic religion of some kind. Not naming any particular sects. But okay, here's the second speculation that Cooper tried to argue.